If I close my eyes and try hard enough, I can still smell the faint mix of cinnamon and bleach that always clung to the lobby floor of the local bakery I used to visit every Wednesday. I was 19 and it was the summer before my junior year, the first time I'd stayed behind in my college town instead of going home. I thought that meant new freedom, no more lectures from my dad about locking my bike, or reminders to text my mom when I got home after dark. Instead, it brought something entirely different, a fact I wish I'd never learned about: just how invisible you can feel until the wrong person sees you. That first Wednesday started so normally it's almost embarrassing. My roommate had left for the week and I was alone in our little apartment complex on Oak Street, just me and her succulents in the window. I'd been cramming for summer math finals all night, so I swung by Margie's bread box first thing in the morning for my usual almond croissant and coffee. The place always felt like walking onto the set of some cozy TV show. There was an older woman at the register, Margie herself, with her ever-present cherry lipstick, and a new face, a guy maybe in his mid-20s, tall, curly red hair, a faded blue apron, his name tag read Jamie. Our first interaction wasn't cinematic, but it stuck with me for reasons I didn't understand then. He was attentive, too attentive. He asked for my order, repeated it back, and as I reached for my wallet, I fumbled, dropping coins everywhere. Before I could stoop, Jamie was already on his knees sweeping up dimes with a disarming smile. "No worries," he said, "clumsy is my default setting." We actually laughed. He showed me a bandage on one finger, claiming a bread knife accident, and for a moment it was just a joke between strangers. I took my bag, mumbled thanks, and chalked it up as a harmless awkward moment. But now, years later, I see it differently. Jamie started making small talk every Wednesday. He remembered my order, began slipping in questions about where I worked, what I studied, even remarking if I changed my hair. It felt friendly, until it didn't. I shrugged off the unease, told myself people are allowed to be interested, and at the time, I was too naive to question when he noticed details I never shared. A week after that first encounter, I got a message request on an app one barely used. The profile had no photo at first, just the initial J. The message was unsettlingly personal. He mentioned the almond croissants and my cute pencil earrings, which I'd worn that morning. I searched for an explanation, wondering if I'd told him my last name or if he'd caught it on a receipt. I ignored the message, but hours later, a new profile with Jamie's full picture turned up. This time, he used my full name in his greeting. That's when a cold prickle started at the base of my neck. Still, I hesitated, not wanting to accuse someone of something insidious without proof. Maybe it's just a small-town thing, I rationalized. I blocked him and double-checked the locks on our door before bed. If I had known that would only be the beginning, I think I would have left Oak Street that night. But the real terror didn't begin until the day I learned what happens when being polite goes too far. Let me tell you what followed, what still keeps me awake, watching my door. The next few days, everything felt off-kilter, as if a slightly wrong note kept sounding in the soundtrack of my otherwise predictable life. I stopped going to Margie's bread box and found myself peering out the curtains before leaving for class, studying every passing car or pedestrian for a shock of red hair. But nothing happened. No new messages. No sightings. By the third day, I convinced myself it was safe to return. Maybe I was overreacting, letting paranoia have its way. That Friday, I needed to pick up textbooks from the campus store, and as I headed downtown, I forced myself to walk past the bakery, just to prove I'd moved on. Through the foggy glass, I saw Margie wiping the counter, but Jamie was nowhere in sight. I exhaled, shoulders loosening for the first time all week. After my errand, I spent the afternoon at the campus library, making up for missed study hours and sinking gratefully into the semi-anonymous comfort that college campuses can sometimes give. By dusk, I packed up and biked home, not noticing until I was halfway down Oak Street that a black sedan was pulling onto the road behind me. My mind churned over the possibilities. After all, anyone could be headed this way at this time. The car slowed as I screeched awkwardly into the lot behind my building. It idled for a few seconds, just enough for dread to unfold in my stomach, then rolled on, tires crunching over loose gravel. I clenched my fists, almost angry at myself for jumping at ghosts. Still, from that moment, the shadows around Oak Street felt denser, each silhouette weighted with implication. That night, something new, a hand-printed note slipped under our door. The handwriting was jagged, unfamiliar, and the paper smelled faintly of bread and sanitizer. It read, "Hope the books were worth the trip." My breath caught. I had told no one where I'd gone. Panic warred with logic while I searched for ways he could have known. Had Jamie followed me on foot? Driven behind me? Was it a lucky guess? Did he see me while passing? I called my roommate, Avery, and tried to brush it off as a prank. She heard the tremor in my voice anyway and offered to come back early. "I'm sure it's just a one-off," she said, "someone joking who works at the bakery. Burgers and movies, I'll be home tomorrow. Don't stress." It helped, a little. Still, I left the bathroom light on and kept my pepper spray by the pillow that night. Over the weekend, Avery arrived with takeout and laughter, chasing off the uneasy air for a brief, sweet while. She reassured me, insisted that if anything else happened, we'd talk to campus security or the police. I wanted to believe her optimism. I really did. 2 days without incident passed. I settled back into my summer grind, class, campus job in the music library, and the occasional walk to downtown for groceries. I kept my headphones off, choosing to trace the silvered reflections in shop windows for any sign of familiar faces. On Wednesday morning, Avery left early for an internship interview. I slept in and woke to my phone vibrating incessantly with notifications. 17 missed calls and messages, some from an unsaved number, others from new, dummy social media accounts that had sent me seemingly harmless greetings or music recommendations. Each message referenced something acutely personal, from the scar on my wrist, from a skateboarding fall, to the lightning bolt sticker on my bike's fender. What started as a gnawing discomfort sharpened into fear. I grappled with questions that had no reassuring answers. Was Jamie inside our building? Was he watching when I took out the trash, or when I watered the plants in the stairwell? When I confided my suspicions to Avery that night, her face paled. "This is not normal," she whispered, suddenly grave. "We need to do something." She snapped photos of the note, the social media messages, and we drafted a report to campus security that night. They listened, but their advice was infuriatingly generic: be aware of your surroundings, keep records of incidents, and let us know if you see him on campus. We felt exposed and powerless. The thread had seeped into our sanctuary, our home, and even the sunlight next morning felt half as warm, somehow dulled by the constant suspicion. Avery started driving me to work and picking me up from classes, even though it meant she had to rearrange her schedule. For the first time in my life, I saw the world as a place where someone's interest could transform, overnight, into something predatory and relentless. The scariest part wasn't that Jamie knew so much about me, it was how quickly safety can dissolve, how fragile the bubble of normalcy really is. Just as I started believing things might finally settle, a single text arrived that changed everything. It wasn't from Jamie, it was from someone claiming to know everything about what was happening, and promising I was in far more danger than I realized. I stared at my phone, my heart thudding so loudly that I could barely register the message at first. The text popped up from an unknown local number. There were no emojis, no hint of joke or familiarity. It read, "If you want this to stop, you need to talk to me. You and your friend need to be careful." The app said the sender's name was Nate. I didn't know a Nate, at least not in this part of my life. I sat frozen, phone glowing on the comforter, as behind me the sounds of Oak Street drifted in, someone walking a dog, a bus shuddering past, the low tick of our old window AC. I wanted to believe it was just some sick prank, maybe someone at the bakery who overheard our conversation, maybe Jamie himself using another number. But there was a difference to this message, a chill in its bluntness. I hesitated before showing Avery. She read it twice, head tilting sharply, then started pacing. "Don't answer it," she advised immediately. "Let's see if he sends anything else. Screenshot it." My fingers obeyed, and already my mind was running awful circles. What if this was a warning? What if Jamie wasn't the only one with his eye on us? The day moved slowly. I couldn't focus on my work-study job. The librarian, Mrs. Wu, noticed my nervous jumpiness as I catalogued vinyls and sheet music. "Long week?" she asked with a kind smile. I almost burst into tears right there, but instead I said, "Just finals." I envied her for believing the world could be that simple. I kept my phone hidden in my bag, checking it at every opportunity, dreading another message. None came that day or the next. Instead, the silence itself became the threat. If Jamie or Nate was out there, what were they waiting for? That Friday night, Avery and I tried to reclaim our peace, binging a true crime docuseries and dissecting every twist and turn as if solving fictional mysteries could help us solve our real one. Just after midnight, a strange noise cracked through the easy flow of our laughter. Something scraped across the fire escape outside the kitchen. We both froze. I gestured for Avery to mute the TV as we crept toward the window. Peering through the slats, I saw nothing at first, then a glint caught my eye, metallic, pale, just beneath the window frame. Avery groped for her phone, ready to dial the police, but before we could move, a sharp knock rattled the window. We both ducked, hearts battering, and heard hurried footsteps retreating along the metal stairs toward the alley below. We waited, listening to every whisper of wind and distant car horn. After several tense minutes, Avery dashed to the door and flicked on the hall lights, illuminating the stairwell and the alley through the side window. There was nobody there, but when I inched the kitchen window open a crack, a folded piece of receipt paper fluttered in. On the slip, a message, scrawled so hard the pen nearly tore the paper: "You're making this harder than it has to be. I'm not going away." I was shaking so badly, Avery had to read the note aloud for me. "This is escalating," she murmured, her bravado from earlier replaced by a tight, urgent fear. "I think we need to go stay somewhere else. Tonight." We threw duffel bags together, gathering only what we needed: laptops, chargers, textbooks, and enough clothes for the weekend. As we locked the door and tiptoed down the stairs, every shadow in the stairwell seemed to shift and pulse. I dialed my older brother, Aaron, who lived one town over. Within half an hour, we were in his living room, the safe hum of ordinary family life around us. But even there, my nerves refused to relax. Aaron grilled us gently, with the skeptical big brother edge I'd always known. He helped me secure a second lock for my apartment door and insisted we lay low for a few days. For the first time in weeks, I slept. When I awoke, Avery had already brewed coffee and was scrolling through her phone, eyes wide. "Look at this," she whispered, holding out her screen. It was a new private message from yet another account, a blank avatar, no mutual friends. The message was a photo: Avery and I huddled on my front steps, zipped duffels beside us, leaving the apartment the night before. We stared at each other in horror. He had been outside. Watching. He knew we'd left, and that meant he'd been there, mere feet away, unseen as we fled the safety of our own home. It was clear we were being hunted not only online, but in the real world, and not even moving towns seemed enough to stop whoever wanted inside our lives. We could run, but how do you hide from someone who already knows your every move? 4. The day after the photo message, the atmosphere at Aaron's place changed. He no longer doubted us, fear replaced skepticism, and he started looking over his shoulder at every unexpected car that passed the house. I caught him checking the locks twice before noon and moving his daughter's play tent away from the front windows. No one said it out loud, but our private terror was now his too. We debated going to the police. Avery was all for it, collecting everything we had, printed screenshots, the original bakery note, even the scuffed slip of receipt paper. "We have a pattern now. They'll have to take it seriously," she insisted. I wanted to believe her, but part of me worried we'd get told again to keep records and be careful. Still, the photo, the one that proved our stalker had been right outside, felt like new leverage. So, late in the afternoon, we drove to the station. Aaron waited with us in the small, antiseptic lobby while the desk officer catalogued the pile of evidence and called in a detective. When Detective Tran finally arrived, her directness was a relief. She scanned the items, not looking for holes in our story, but patterns, dates, even handwriting styles. She asked questions, names, possible motives, had Jamie ever threatened us before, and listened carefully to our answers. She promised surveillance around our apartment complex and a patrol car to drive past Oak Street for the next few nights. We left with case numbers, a little card with her extension, and warnings not to confront anyone ourselves if we saw them. Back at Aaron's, we tried to shake the tension off with pizza and board games. But even surrounded by family, I found myself flinching at every sound outside, every unfamiliar car, every buzz of a phone, every knock at the door. That night, for the first time, I dreamed in jumpy, fractured images, flashes of Jamie's face, but twisted, unrecognizable, a tumble of moments where the line between paranoia and reality blurred. I woke in a sweat, the taste of fear on my tongue, and found Avery scrolling grimly through another round of message requests. Neither of us slept again. Sunday morning, Detective Tran called. The phone's vibration startled all of us, but her calm voice pushed a little hope into the room. "We traced the number that sent that last photo," she explained. "The phone was prepaid, but it pinged a tower only a block from your apartment. We're pulling footage from the bakery's security cameras and a city-owned camera on the street. Until we get an ID, stay with family or friends, and don't post anything on social media, even private stories." It was oddly reassuring. Yet beneath that, the prickle of dread sharpened. I kept wondering if Jamie even worked alone. The Nate message had used details only someone watching my online life would know. Had we annoyed more than one person? Or were these just different masks the same stalker wore? Avery and I debated every angle. Should we post a warning to mutual friends in town, or did that risk escalating things? Instead, we quietly messaged a few campus friends who lived on our street, telling them to stay vigilant, to let us know if they saw anyone unfamiliar around our building. On Monday, to our relief, there were no new messages. We took tiny comfort in Detective Tran's promise of increased patrols, though I couldn't shake the image of that photo, someone lurking unseen, camera aimed at us from the dark. Aaron offered us his guest room indefinitely, insisting, "You're not going back there till this is over. Let's see what the detective finds." Still, life outside kept moving. Avery couldn't skip her internship, I still had shifts at the music library. So each morning, either Aaron or his wife gave us rides, waiting until we were inside the building and texting us check-ins throughout the day. For the first time since starting college, I felt both like a child again and like prey. By Wednesday, with no new threats and constant reassurance from Detective Tran's updates, we started to wonder if maybe increased attention had scared Jamie or Nate off. Maybe he was watching, saw us armed with police protection, and backed out. But as I shut down my computer in the nearly empty music library that evening, preparing to lock up, I glanced toward the main doors. Pressed against the glass on the outer side, barely visible until the dusk hid his hair, stood Jamie. He wasn't moving, just watching, eyes fixed on mine, unmoving, a strange, calm smile on his face. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The library suddenly felt as big and empty as a dark cave, and I realized, all at once, that nothing we'd done had really made us safe. That was the night I learned sometimes you can see your nightmare coming, sometimes it stands right in front of you, daring you to try and escape. What happened next nearly broke me. Shall I continue with the next section? The moment I made eye contact with Jamie through the glass, the little voice inside me that always asked, "Am I just overreacting?" completely vanished. This was real. He was here. He had broken whatever invisible barrier exists between online menace and physical threat. For a second, I thought maybe he'd leave if I ignored him. But Jamie only grinned wider, as if relishing my fear. That smile froze me in place. My hands hovered over my backpack, trying to decide if grabbing my phone or pepper spray would be smarter. I'd always imagined myself as someone who'd yell, who'd confront, but in the moment, adrenaline turned my limbs to stone. I remembered Detective Tran's warning, "Don't approach, don't give them what they want." I dialed Avery with shaking hands, whispering, "He's here. Right at the door." She answered instantly, her voice razor sharp, "Don't move." I'm calling Tran. Stay where there are cameras. Keep him in sight if you can. As I breathed in shallow bursts, trying to think rationally, Jamie started tapping the glass first gently, then with a slow, deliberate rhythm. It wasn't loud, but each tap sent my heart skittering. The tap-tap-tap pounded through my skull, a child's taunt made sinister. Just when I thought he'd try the handle, I heard the thump of heavy boots running down the corridor. Security had seen him on the street camera and responded faster than I'd thought possible. Jamie stepped back, raised both palms as if in surrender, and simply walked away like he was leaving a dentist appointment, not stalking and terrorizing a stranger. When security hustled me into the office, I was trembling so hard my teeth chattered. All I could think was that Jamie's confidence, that calm, unhurried retreat, meant he didn't care about being seen anymore. It meant he'd crossed some line, and for him, there was no turning back. Back at Aaron's, I felt my world getting smaller. Even places that had always felt safe, the library, campus, my favorite coffee shop, were now shadowed with unease. Detective Tran met with us in person, reviewing Jamie's image from the cameras and asking if we wanted to file for a restraining order. My brain cycled through everything I'd learned in countless safety trainings: make noise, get witnesses, document everything. But in the end, what worked in theory was powerless against a real threat with patience and endless resources. We filed the paperwork. The words restraining order felt heavy and almost theatrical, like something out of a movie. In reality, it came down to filling out forms, describing Jamie in minute detail, and waiting for a court date. Tran promised they'd serve him with the order, but reminded us both to stay vigilant. He might escalate, she warned quietly. Once a boundary is set, some people push even harder. Avery and I doubled down on every warning: never walk alone, stay where there are cameras or people, and always let someone know where we were. But the mental wear and tear started to show. My hands shook when I paid for groceries, and I developed the habit of scanning every new patron in a cafe. I slept with my phone on Do Not Disturb except for Aaron's number and Avery's. My college experience, once filled with spontaneous adventures, now operated like a high-security mission. Then, as if life wanted to show me how easy it was to erode someone's sense of self, the messages started again. New numbers, new profiles, some were obviously Jamie, others cryptic and short, hinting at a wider net of watchers. The DMs grew more desperate, sometimes angry, sometimes apologetic, swinging from pleading to threatening in the course of a few sentences. I only wanted to talk. I saw you shopping with your friend. Are you ignoring me on purpose? You left your bike unlocked. You should be more careful. Avery began receiving them too, and we doubled our documentation, looping Detective Tran in on every escalation. Tran arranged for Jamie to be picked up and served with the restraining order in person. That should have been the end, but instead, it triggered an avalanche. The night after the order was served, Aaron's phone buzzed with a notification from the security camera he'd set up on the porch at my request. The screen showed a blurry image of Jamie, standing on the sidewalk across from Aaron's house, staring straight into the lens. He didn't move for almost 10 minutes, just stood there while cars passed and lights flickered in the windows. I thought I'd known fear before, but this was something deeper. This was helplessness, the realization that laws and locks don't stop someone who thinks rules aren't written for them. That was the night I realized obsession isn't just about being watched, it's about having your life rewritten by someone else's will. The worst, though, was still to come. Because Jamie had only just begun to show how far he would go. 6. After seeing Jamie on the security feed, none of us slept that night. Aaron stayed posted at the front window, a baseball bat in his hand, a normally easygoing brother turned watchful sentinel. In the guest room, Avery and I lay side by side, talking in whispers, every creak in the house transformed into an omen. I found myself calculating escape routes for the first time in my life. How quickly could I grab my keys? Could we jump the backyard fence? What would I do if Jamie set foot inside? Aaron's wife, Hannah, tried to keep a sense of normality for their little girl, Kayla, but the anxiety seeped through, salt instead of sugar on the morning oatmeal, a cup shattering on the tile floor. I made a silent promise I wouldn't let my nightmare touch this family more than it already had. By mid-afternoon, the patrol car out front drew neighbors' attention. Mrs. DeMarco from 3 doors down knocked with a basket of cookies, concern written in the lines on her face. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked. The lie came easily, "Just a little scare, nothing to worry about." Saying it made me feel like I'd stepped outside myself, just another character in my own story, reading a line someone else wrote. That evening, Detective Tran called with an update. We questioned Jamie. He acted calm, claimed he didn't know you outside of the bakery. He denied everything. Her voice grew tight, almost apologetic. He's skilled at walking the line. He hasn't technically broken any laws except harassment, and he seems to know just how far to go. He's here outside my brother's house, I said, voice cracking. Aaron's camera caught him. What else do you need? Tran's sigh was audible through the phone. Keep the footage. Keep up your routines. Break patterns if you can. And remember, most offenders escalate when they lose control. Don't let your guard down. It was solid advice, but offered no actual comfort. Tension became the air we breathed. Avery started reading about digital privacy, deleting old posts, locking down every account, disabling location sharing. We started using burner emails to sign up for apps, considered changing our phone numbers, even argued about whether to withdraw from our summer classes. But withdrawal felt like defeat. I refused to surrender my world to someone else's obsession. We decided instead on subtle defiance, borrowing different cars, arranging rides so our patterns shifted daily. Aaron made plans to install motion-activated lights around the house and added locks to the backyard gate. Still, Jamie's presence colored everything. But the true horror landed on a Tuesday, a sweltering afternoon when the hours crawled. Kayla was playing in her kiddie pool in the backyard, Hannah was organizing laundry in the next room. Avery and I were prepping lunch in the kitchen, the windows wide open to let in the breeze. A loud knock at the front door froze us both. I peeked through the peephole, no one. But just as I turned away, I saw a shadow flicker past the side window. I barely opened my mouth to warn Aaron before my phone buzzed. A new message, a video clip. The footage showed Kayla, splashing and laughing in the tiny pool, Hannah reading on a lawn chair beside her. The video panned up to the kitchen window, where Avery and I stood. Avery's face went white. The video was timestamped only minutes ago. I called Tran in a panic. He's here. He's filming us. Aaron went outside, yelling into the street, but the only reply was the sizzle of insect wings in the heat. Tran promised patrol cars would sweep the block, but I felt stripped, panicked, naked under someone's unflinching gaze. The family's routine changed completely. Kayla played only indoors, the shades stayed drawn, and we never opened the doors without confirming who was outside. Hannah, brave for everyone else's sake, began tucking knives under the couch cushions. Yet the sense of reality thinning, of the world becoming a maze constructed by Jamie, couldn't be shaken. The length Jamie would go to frighten, to impose, to assert dominance became clearer. It wasn't just about me, it was about showing us how small and breakable our comfort really was. One night, after Kayla had gone to sleep and the neighborhood sat in uneasy silence, a letter slipped under Aaron's door. It was handwritten, blocky letters in thick black marker. I see you're trying so hard to be brave, to stay together, but it won't help. I'm not going anywhere. If you want things to go back to normal, you know where to find me. That letter tore away any remaining illusion. We weren't dealing with accidental encounters or harmless infatuation, this was calculated intimidation, and for the first time, I wondered if we'd ever get our old lives back. The next night proved just how much we still had to fear. Sleep became nothing more than brief, uneasy stretches, restless half-dreams full of doors creaking open, footsteps in silent hallways, eyes glimpsed through cracked blinds. It didn't matter how many locks we checked or how many times Aaron circled the block. The knowledge that someone was orchestrating our terror from the shadows kept us wound-tight, nervy and raw. The police patrols came and went, the flashing blue lights a periodic reminder that someone was aware, even if they seemed powerless to stop it. Detective Tran continued checking in, her calm voice was an anchor, and she shared what little progress they'd made. No clear fingerprints. No camera footage showing his face, just grainy outlines, she admitted one night, frustration bleeding into her usually even tone. But we're not giving up. You need to stay cautious. Try to act as normally as you can. Normal was a hollow joke. Kayla constantly asked why the funny police cars were always around. Hannah snapped at Erin more than she wanted. Avery and I took to scribbling anxious to-do lists in the dark because sleep would not come. I noticed how my own reflection looked thinner, eyes wide, shoulders hunched, as if the weight was becoming physical, dragging me down day by day. Avery and I continued to alternate between frantic action, installing apps, changing passwords, searching for tips on how to disappear from public databases, and fits of hollow laughter when things felt just a little too surreal. At one point, she tried to joke, should have just taken up a hobby that involved fewer people, then quickly looked away, swallowing tears. Then, a week after the letter, something shifted. Detective Tran came by to update us in person. She looked bone-tired, her suit jacket wrinkled from too many hours at her desk. She pulled us aside, lowering her voice. We're going to try something new. We want to draw him out, get more direct evidence. It's risky, but we'll keep plainclothes officers nearby. Are you willing? I hesitated, but said yes. Anything that might put an end to our ordeal. The plan, Avery and I would return to our apartment, acting as if we were resuming normal life. Cops would be stationed out of sight, ready to respond if Jamie appeared or made contact. There was no guarantee it would work, but the alternative, continuing to hide and wait, felt worse. Walking up the familiar steps to our home was surreal. The place still smelled faintly of old coffee and lemon cleaner. But the walls seemed to press in, every angle strange and slightly off. We moved through the space like strangers, looking for evidence of his presence, even after everything had already been dusted for prints and checked for cameras. That first night back, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling as Avery tossed and turned in the next room. Every car that passed outside seemed to slow down a little too long, every shadow on the wall a possible lurking figure. Yet nothing happened. Morning came, gray and hesitant, and for a moment, I almost believed maybe, just maybe, it was over. But the second day back, while Avery showered and I made toast, my phone chimed with a new notification. An unfamiliar number, as always. This time, it was a single sentence, "Missed you." The words chilled me, not for what they said, but for the implication behind them. He wanted us to know that wherever we went, whatever precautions we took, we were never out of his sight. Within minutes, Avery shouted from the bathroom. She'd found another note, tucked behind the bottle of her favorite shampoo, her name written in looping script, with a message underneath, "You look better with your hair down." The implication was blunt and terrifying. He had been in our apartment, recently enough to have seen us there, recently enough to have left a message directly targeting one of our deepest fears. The police scoured the place and found signs that a lock had been tampered with, but the intruder had left no fingerprints, no shoe prints, nothing but his words. For a moment, hope threatened to collapse into despair. If he could still get in, what was the point of locks, of police, of all the instincts we'd spent our lives trusting? That afternoon, as we sat on the living room floor, surrounded by uniformed officers and the sterile scent of forensic dust, Avery suddenly broke down. What if he never stops? What if we're stuck like this forever? Her words weren't just a fear, they felt like a prophecy. But right as our hope faded, Detective Tran revealed a critical piece of evidence, a clue that could finally reveal who Jamie really was and whether he'd been working alone all along. The next 24 hours would change everything. Tran sat with us in the living room after the officers left, her notebook sprawled open on the coffee table next to Avery's trembling mug of tea. Her usual measured calm was replaced by something more electric, a spark of urgency as she spread out photos and printouts in front of us. "We found something in the bakery's old employee records," she began, tapping a list of names. "Jamie started working there 2 months before you first noticed him. But we looked deeper, he's not who he says he is. His real name is Caleb Jameson. He has a record from another state, prior harassment, restraining orders, even a night spent in jail for trespassing. He's been using the name Jamie Beck here, but there's no legal paperwork for that. We wouldn't have caught it if he hadn't slipped up with a paycheck deposited in both names. The words felt like cold water poured over my skin. Images of his two friendly smiles snapped into new focus, a mask, not a personality. That's not all, Tran said, lowering her voice further. The number that texted you is Nate? When we pulled the phone records, it showed activity months before you ever walked into the bakery. There are calls to a number in another city, an apartment complex listed as Caleb's old address. We believe he's working with someone else, or at the very least, someone's helping him keep tabs on you. Avery blanched, gripping her knees. So it isn't just Jamie, Caleb, we have to worry about. Tran nodded. We've set a digital trap. If he, or his accomplice, tries reaching you on any of your known accounts, or if he comes back to your apartment, we'll have someone in the building ready to intervene. For the first time in weeks, hope stirred amid the exhaustion. Avery and I agreed to stay mobile, shuffling between friends' apartments and borrowing cars, making our routines unpredictable. We deleted any social media posts that hinted at location, kept our phones switched to airplane mode when not needed, and shared every scrap of new information with Tran. Still, the feeling of being hunted clung to us. Returning to life as usual was impossible. At the music library, I caught myself jumping at the echo of footsteps in the stacks. Avery started avoiding the mirror by the elevator in our building, convinced she'd spot someone lurking behind her in the reflection. A few days after Tran's visit, another message came through, this one different from the usual taunts. It was a picture, captured from a low angle, of the green lamp on the desk in the library's back reading room. The caption said only, "See you soon." It wasn't just about invading my home or digital life anymore. It was about showing us that nowhere was off limits, that even the smallest joys, a safe corner to study in, a cup of coffee in a sunny seat, could be spoiled by a single watcher. Avery's parents insisted she come home to Massachusetts, away from the threat entirely. She wavered, guilt and fear pulling her in opposite directions. "I don't want to leave you here alone," she told me. "But if this is bigger than just Jamie, I might be endangering my own family." We cried together that night, the kind of ugly, raw tears that left us both hollow and exhausted. She left 2 days later, promise heavy in her voice, "You have to keep fighting. Don't let him win by making you disappear." Alone for the first time, I felt a strange mix of relief and desolation. I checked locks obsessively, slept in short fits, and grew hypervigilant in every routine. Tran checked in daily, updating me on their progress, digital traces, possible connections, the search for an accomplice. Then, one night, as rain battered the window and the street outside glistened black and slick, I came home to find another note taped to my door. Unlike the others, it was typed out, formal and composed. "This isn't about you personally anymore. You're just someone to practice on. Let's see how well your friends can protect you. See you inside." My hand shook so badly, I could barely dial Tran's number. Her voice was a lifeline, "We're upping protection tonight. Do not stay alone, go to errands. It's time for us to end this." I grabbed my bag, locked the door behind me for what I hoped would be the last time, and stepped out into the rain, feeling every drop as both a shield and a warning. The final confrontation was coming. I could feel it. But when I finally learned who had truly betrayed me, it wasn't Jamie or Caleb who shocked me most, it was someone much closer, someone I never would have suspected. What happened next would change everything. That night at errands, we closed the curtains and turned on every possible light, as if brightness could keep danger at bay. I messaged Tran to let her know I'd arrived safely, then spent an hour pacing, replaying every memory, every face, wondering who could be entwined in this nightmare besides Caleb. Kayla, picking up on the adult tension, drew pictures of superheroes guarding our house. Aaron and Hannah tried their best to keep life normal, but their whispered conversations in the kitchen carried a new tone, worried, conspiratorial. The question hung everywhere, who was helping Caleb? Rain pattered on the roof, a metronome for my anxiety. I checked my phone like a ritual, scanning messages, notifications, even old photos for something I might have missed. And then, buried in an old group chat, I noticed a number local, familiar, and yet I didn't recognize the contact photo. My pulse quickened. This number matched the one that had sent the Nate messages weeks earlier. I racked my brain, who used to have this number in my life? And then, like a puzzle piece slotting into place, I remembered. My ex, Matt. Not the kind you dread running into, but a roommate's old boyfriend, sweet, a little odd, and always hovering at the edges of our college friend circle. He'd left months ago, moving in with a girl he'd met through a community play. But before that he and Caleb, then going by Jamie, had worked a few shifts together at Margie's bread box. My skin crawled as I scrolled through old texts. Matt's tone was always friendly, even helpful, offering rides, suggesting we all hang out more. I recalled the handful of awkward times he'd shown up outside campus parties unannounced, always eager with a smile and an inside joke just vague enough to unsettle. I called Tran immediately, barely able to keep the tremor out of my voice. Matt, my old friend, he's Nate. He's the accomplice. Tran's professionalism didn't falter, but even over the phone, I heard her relief. We suspected, but hadn't connected all the dots. Thank you. Stay put. We'll find them both. Everything moved faster after that. The police coordinated a stakeout, officers planted around Oak Street and the bakery's back alley, watching both my old apartment complex and Matt's last known address. Tran debriefed me with sharp, direct questions. How well did you know Matt? Had he ever been inside our apartment? Was he tech-savvy, able to break into social accounts or slip by undetected after hours? The last question made my blood run cold. I realized there had been nights when I'd come home to a strangely open window, a misplaced water glass, odd but dismissible things that suddenly felt sinister. Meanwhile, Aaron and Hannah strategized who to call in an emergency, which neighbors could be trusted, when to grab Kayla and leave if anything felt wrong. The lines of safety shrank again. I was too tired to feel true terror anymore. What I felt was a tired certainty that resolution was, finally, within reach. The next day, Tran updated us with a plan. They would lure Matt by having me post a vague, public message, suggesting I'd be moving out permanently and wouldn't be around anymore. Matt is the one who craves information, controlled by proxy, she explained. It'll draw him, hopefully draw them both, to make a move, digital or physical. When that happens, we'll be waiting. That evening, with trembling hands, I composed a simple post. After everything, time for a fresh start. Goodbye, Oak Street. Thanks for the memories. I logged off, heart pounding. Tran stationed plainclothes officers outside, another inside a neighbor's house across the street. I packed a go bag, Kayla's superhero drawing on top for luck, and braced myself for the outcome. It didn't take long. That night, Matt's number called twice. When I didn't answer, a series of texts and DMs poured in, some under his name, some under dummy accounts. The messages mixed nostalgia and veiled threats. It's not fair, you decide when things end. Some friends are forever, you know. Minutes later, a knock echoed on the door. Aaron paused the TV as Tran signaled us from the hall, motioning for us to stay put. Officers converged from across the street. There was a brief, urgent scramble, the sound of a struggle, voices raised, doors slamming. Tran returned, face stone calm, and nodded. We have them both. You're safe now. At least as safe as anyone gets, after something like this. Relief crashed over me, tidal and dizzying, but it wasn't happiness. Not really. There was only exhaustion and a new understanding that safety is never simple, and trust, once broken, must be rebuilt piece by piece. But the end of the nightmare wasn't the end of the story. What nobody warns you is that picking up the pieces afterward is sometimes harder than surviving the threat itself. My next challenge was learning how to live again, with all the scars no one else can see. For the first time in months, I woke to the soft morning chorus of birds instead of the jolting beep of phone notifications or the tread of someone pacing outside my room. Sunlight cut stripes on Aaron's polished floors. But even in the new stillness, it took effort to believe the siege was over, that Caleb and Matt were both in custody, and that my daily world could resume. Sleep remained restless. I flinched at shadows on the walls and startled at every unexpected knock, convinced if only in my body that someone, somewhere, was still watching. I'd start frying eggs for breakfast, only to realize my hands were shaking so much yolk spilled down my wrist. Trauma had turned my senses traitorous, amplifying noise and memory. Hannah convinced me to enroll in a support group, a mix of college students, parents, even a teacher from Kayla's school. There I met Rena, whose story mirrored mine in eerie ways. "People treat you like the threat is over once the person is caught," she whispered one evening after the meeting, "but what about the invisible stuff that lingers?" We talked through the fog, sometimes making dark jokes about paranoia and sometimes admitting, quietly, that we blamed ourselves for not catching on sooner. Avery called every night from Massachusetts, her voice a lifeline across dark miles. She asked about therapy, recommended books on boundaries and trauma, and never once made me feel like moving forward was an obligation. "Take as much time as you need," she told me. "If you ever want to come visit, you're always safe here." I promised her I'd consider a change, though I knew deep down how much I still longed for the version of home I'd loved before Oak Street was poisoned with fear. Meanwhile, Detective Tran became more than a caseworker. She checked in even after the charges were filed, calling to explain the upcoming hearing process and answer every small question Aaron or I thought to ask. She told me Matt confessed under questioning he saw himself as a protector, not a threat, convinced he was helping me against outsiders. Caleb, on the other hand, played the part of the misunderstood loner, eager for leniency, but Tran assured us the evidence was rock solid: the messages, the notes, the camera footage, the testimony from Margie's staff. It was at Tran's encouragement that I decided to testify. The hearing itself passed in a blur, my words tumbling out as if spoken by someone else. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Caleb never met my eyes, Matt hunched, avoiding the gaze of everyone. Days later, the judge issued a no-contact order, and both men faced jail time and mandated counseling. I wanted to feel triumphant, but mostly I felt emptied, like my story, once mine alone, now belonged to the record, stamped with legal consequence. But recovery never comes all at once. I struggled with nights when anxiety made my chest clench so tightly I could barely breathe. Sometimes I'd jump at my own reflection, half expecting a stranger to materialize behind me. The therapist I met through the group taught me grounding techniques and helped untangle the knots of self-blame. Guilt, embarrassment, even anger, all of it lived in me, compact and smoldering. Aaron and Hannah never faltered in their support. They insisted I join movie nights, dragged me along to plant vegetables in the little plot behind the house, made ordinary moments sacred by virtue of just being safe and shared. Even Kayla, young as she was, drew me a picture one day, a bright yellow sun shining over a house, stick figures with big grins. She labeled it, in wobbly letters, "Everybody safe now." That's when it hit me: healing is stitched together from the smallest acts of love and patience, not dramatic triumphs. Slowly, sunlight became less threatening, laughter returned, and routine stopped feeling like a performance for unseen eyes. One evening, on a walk down Oak Street, I saw the bakery, Margie back at the counter, life resuming its ordinary rhythm. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the world move as if nothing had changed, knowing I was changed forever. But the scars from that summer would shape every choice I made going forward. Here's how I learned to trust again, how I rebuilt my life on my own terms even when fear still lurked at the edges of memory. I wish I could say healing followed a straight line. The truth is, for every day I found myself walking in the sunlight instead of hiding from shadows, there was another day anxiety convinced me the nightmare would come roaring back. My phone still made me tense, especially when an unknown number flashed. Every time a car slowed outside Aaron's house, my heart would speed up, scanning for faces I recognized and ones I feared. But I found strength in small victories. Reclaiming them became a kind of resistance. I started running again, first in the early mornings with Aaron pacing me, then alone. The rhythm of footsteps on pavement, the sting of cool air, slowly chipped at the feeling that the world belonged to someone else. I kept my music volume low at first, then, after a few months, allowed myself to get lost in songs, letting the city unfold for me and not for anyone watching. Therapy helped too. Learning to hold each feeling without shame, I began rewriting the story I'd been living. "You did everything right," my therapist, Dr. Gupta, told me each session. "Remember, your safety didn't end because you let someone in. It ended because they chose to violate it. But you can choose how the story continues." That permission changed me. Slowly, I opened up about everything, not just to therapists or the group, but to new friends, to people I dated, and most importantly, to myself. If a boundary was crossed, I spoke up and didn't apologize for it. The first time it happened in a new relationship, I felt the old panic. But I told him, quietly, about my history. He listened, believed me, and together we set clear boundaries: no tracking each other's location, no surprise visits, always checking in about comfort levels. It was something I'd never thought to ask for before all this. Avery kept her promise, inviting me out to Massachusetts for a week that spring. We made coffee in her tiny apartment, watched thunderstorms from her balcony, and traded scar stories without flinching. "See," she'd say with a laugh. "You're the most prepared person I know now. Nobody's ever going to take you by surprise again." There was truth in her words. I found I'd developed radar not for danger alone, but for signals that my instincts, even shaken, could still be trusted. Kayla's drawings filled my phone's camera roll, dozens of silly superheroes and happy families, reminders that innocence can survive even in a world where monsters sometimes wear familiar faces. I held onto those pictures, tacked them above my desk when I finally moved back to my own place, different street, different city, but with the same beat-up suitcase and the same need for safe, sacred space. Margie's bakery reopened after a brief closure, and I stopped in one sunny Saturday. She recognized me, waving with her cherry lipstick smile, asking if I'd try something new now. And I did. I broke from my old routine, ordered a chocolate muffin, and sat by the window to read a novel. For the first time, the ordinary felt like a choice, not a risk. Word spread about what happened, but with the whispers came something unexpected: other people's stories. Quiet confessions over coffee, in stairwells, in late-night texts, stories of being followed, ignored by authority, accused of overreacting. I realized my story, while mine, was also hundreds of others. The more I listened, the braver I became. And the more I spoke, the more others stepped forward too. Some losses remained. There are places I can't revisit, certain smells, bleach and cinnamon, capable of churning my stomach. But each day I chose living over hiding was a day I refused to be written out of my own life. Aaron's family became my anchor, celebrating every birthday, every ordinary milestone as a triumph. On the anniversary of the night everything ended, we watched old movies, ate popcorn, and Kayla made us all wear capes. "Everyone's a superhero tonight," she declared. "Even grown-ups who get scared. It's not that fear is gone, it's that it isn't the whole story anymore. I've learned to trust myself, to take precaution without surrendering joy. I know now the world is not broken, just imperfect. Like me, it keeps going." But what truly surprised me were the ways trauma fused my life with others, how sharing my story created a network of safety far stronger than anything I could have built alone. Here's what I wish everyone could know: real strength isn't about being untouched by darkness, it's what you grow around the shadows that matters. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's that survival is not about returning to the life you had before. It's about remaking yourself with the pieces you're given, learning that it's okay, necessary, even to gather help, to need a team. At first, I thought surviving would mean never letting myself be vulnerable again, never trusting, always staying 3 steps ahead. But every small act of kindness along the way unexpectedly helped seal up the fissures, whether it was Avery's nightly calls or transpatient explanations, Margie's nod from behind the counter, or Aaron's strong, silent presence after the worst nights. There were setbacks. Days when I still couldn't walk past the row of old shops without my breath coming short, nights when I triple-checked every lock and replayed old conversations, wondering if I'd missed warning signs. But even these moments became less about defeat and more about acceptance. I learned that there's no shame in fear, the real courage is refusing to let it dictate every action, reframing each anxious night as proof that I still cared about my own safety, my own place in the world. In the months that followed, I made it a point to advocate for clearer, stronger campus safety resources. I spoke with counselors, sat on panels, and, nervous at first, shared my experience with other students. If even one person felt less alone, it was worth the tremble in my voice. People opened up in return. I wasn't the only one with invisible scars. Together, we made the world shrink just a little for those who would do harm, simply by refusing to keep silent. The trial taught me the meaning of closure, a word that often seemed impossible. Justice, I learned, isn't about erasing the harm done, but acknowledging it, giving it a name, and then gently, persistently, taking its power away. The scars remain, but so does the ability to choose what happens next. Caleb received time behind bars and court-mandated counseling, as did Matt. No one in my circle downplayed my paranoia again. My new routine is full of boundaries. I keep my doors locked, my passwords long, and my circle of trust small but fiercely loyal. I've grown grateful for each ordinary moment, catching a bus on time, swapping recipes with Hannah, walking Kayla to her first day of school. I take the long way home sometimes, not out of fear, but because the route lets me see the sunrise over the city, reminding me this is my life again, for good or for ill. Looking back, I see now that the world never owed me safety. But I do owe it to myself to keep moving, to keep advocating, to keep sharing, and to remind anyone willing to listen, you are not alone. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your instincts, gather your people, speak up even when your voice shakes, and remember, while not every nightmare looks like a stranger in the night, there's always a way toward morning, toward healing, and toward hope. No matter how dark a chapter becomes, the story hasn't ended yet. The shadows fade, and as they do, what you've survived can become the light, showing others, whispering, yes, it's possible to come through, and even to begin again.